The key aim of AmCham's extensive program of events is to educate and inspire the senior leadership teams of our member companies. And that's why we're excited to have this partnership with Bain & Company to bring you cutting-edge events with global thought leaders. With that, I'm pleased to welcome Bain partner in Stockholm, Christine Frostmark, who will give us a brief introduction to Bain & Company in the Nordics and introduce us to today's speakers. Christine, the screen is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here and meet you and discuss one of our pet topics at Bain & Company. I'm the managing partner of Sweden, and this is a topic we work a lot with here in the Nordics. And most of you maybe know Bain, but just to give you a little bit of sense what we are a global consultancy firm. We have 63 offices in almost 40 countries around the world. And here in the Nordics, we have 4 offices with a bit more than 500 people working with our clients across. And I'm so happy that this is the topic because it is one of the biggest topics that we do as in Bain is customer oriented, and I think is very close to our heart with what we do. And therefore, I'm also very pleased to have Fred and Darci here. And I will start with Fred. You joined us back in 1977, so you're one of those who really have built our firm and also truly pioneered customer loyalty for us, for our clients, and for the world, to be honest. You've written 5 books and you have invented the Net Promoter System. And last time I checked, according to the Fortune magazine, actually 2/3 of the Fortune 1000 are using Net Promoter today. And it's actually also so not only Net Promoter, but also the Net Promoter economics to put this not only to be nice to the customer, really this is something that goes across also for shareholders and so on. And we have seen great success here. And we also see many times that this is not so much only about the customer, but it's about creating real results also for the shareholders, as I said, and also for the employees. We call that the triple play of the results, that you actually achieve all of that together. And I think I also want to say thank you, Fred, now and have the chance. But I think for me and many of my fellow Bainees and for many of our clients, you have truly helped us in the work you've done to realize what we all aspire to not only delight our customers, but to truly wow them and be that leader that I think we all dream of. So thank you so much, Fred, for that inspiration. And I really look forward to hear you today. And Darci, really pleased to have you here as well. Darci is our global leader for Bain's customer strategy and marketing practice. And you have throughout the years spent a lot of time on these topics. You, of course, understand and have done a lot of work with MPS, but you also done retention work, segmentation work, I would say, across the whole customer and marketing space. And I think another spike that you truly have is also pioneering the employee engagement, understanding how important it is. If you get the employees to love their job, it's a lot easier to get your customer to really do that. And I know you're amazingly inspiring on that. And a lot of your clients have said that that's one of your distinct advantages. So thank you, both of you, for being here. And I'm also, on behalf of Bain, very happy to listen to you. So the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Christina. And it's a pleasure to be here. I'm actually in sunny Miami as we speak, so I hope you feel some of the warmth emanating electronically. Winning on Purpose is some ways a capstone of a long history of work. If I go through all of the books that we've written on customer loyalty, in a sense, it's an intellectual history of a business movement, of the customer-centered business model, what we now call customer capitalism. But it's also a practical history of what practitioners have done in this world of organizations who do believe that the customer is at the center of business. As you'll see, I think, although some of us feel like that's a common point of view, it's actually still a minority position, sadly. But I think there were almost none of us 30 years ago when The Loyalty Effect was published. I recognized that the world, and Bain & Company, in fact, did not fully appreciate the microeconomic advantage of keeping customers loyal, of having them come back for more and bring their friends. And so we started on this journey by a deeper understanding of what really drives cash flows in a business. And there's powerful evidence, even back then, that when you got this flywheel going, that customers come back for more and bring their friends, although it's not measured by accountants and still is not measured by generally accepted accounting principles. Nevertheless, it is at the core of prosperity. How do you earn loyalty? Well, a lot of people took this first book, The Loyalty Effect, and they started loyalty programs and point systems and gimmicks and marketing fads. And I was so frustrated. So the second book, Loyalty Rules, was what I think actually earns loyalty, which is leadership. It's a leader principles and values that create the kind of community that treat people right and earn their loyalty. That led to a recognition almost 20 years ago that we just don't have a measurement. You know, we're using accounting metrics to try and put into, and accounting is essentially a financially oriented mindset. It is an investor-centered world, and we're trying to create a customer-centered world. And I recognize we can't do that without a measurement process, as well as the microeconomics to support it. And that led to the invention of the Net Promoter Score. How likely is it to recommend us to a friend or colleague, 0 through 10, that simple idea that when we touch a life, you either enrich it or diminish it, and we need to measure that in a practical, real-time way. That was pure theory. When the book came out, I think there were 3 companies that actually used the Net Promoter Score and system, Bain being one of the 3. However, over the next 5 or 6 years, thousands of people adopted Net Promoter. And so 2.0, the Ultimate Question 2.0, was reflecting that this is best practices and ideas that we're working. Today, Winning on Purpose is our best effort at bringing this business movement up to date, correcting some of the abuses and misuses of Net Promoter, which are too common. But it's also leading, we move from economics to leadership to purpose. And someone the other day said, "Oh, isn't purpose sort of passé? That that was last year's fad." And it struck. I said, "Oh my goodness, purpose is always vital. It's been important, 5,000 years before the Bible. Today, why we exist as an organization, what our life's mission is. This is always a relevant question. What makes it particularly relevant today is most companies have the wrong purpose." So winning on purpose is not just saying purpose is important. It's saying 90% of businesses today have embraced a purpose that is sure to fail. And that is a radical proposition. I hope you'll see that point as we go ahead. I think this makes sense when we think about what creates a great organization. What should we be proud of when we accomplish with our businesses? For far too long, businesses who had nice financials or nice stock market returns for 5 years or 10 years became our exemplars. And this was the approach used by Jim Collins in writing Good to Great. His 11 exemplars are listed on the left on this slide. And they were chosen because for a period of time, they had really lovely financials. The accountants loved these companies. But did that make them great? Well, if you know these firms, today, there's certainly not a lot of great firms on that list. There are people in jail. There are billions of dollars in fines. There are multiple bankruptcies. There is nothing. There are 1 or 2 excellent firms, but great? I don't think so. And accounting, it's just evidence that when we see the world through an accounting lens, we have no idea who is great and resilient and following a true north that has many years of success ahead of it. As a counter proposal to this list, I think we should look at companies whose customers love doing business with them, those that have the highest Net Promoter Score in their industry. Those were listed in the Ultimate Question 2.0. My co-author, Rob Markey, and I put this list together and published it. And they're, in at least my inspection, these are pretty darn good firms. Have they been great financially as well as good to their people? let's check it out. Let's look at the financial returns of these customer love leaders versus the Jim Collins stars. And what you see is in the 10 years after each book was published, the total shareholder return of Jim Collins' so-called great companies was horrible. It was 0.4 times the median shareholder return in North America. So not even mediocre, where median would be average. These are disasters. And yet we have a mindset that somehow lets us forget that disasters are how we learn what greatness is. And it is very frustrating. Now let's look at the loyalty leaders. Their total shareholder returns for all the public companies on our list beat the stock market fivefold, which is a pretty extraordinary performance. And I was sort of aware of this. I started investing personally in all of these companies because I had a theory that the stock market and the world in general is just blinded by a financial and accounting-driven mindset. They don't see that the core of business prosperity is that flywheel of treating customers so well they come back for more and bring their friends. And so it consistently undervalues the stock of these great companies I think of as great. So what you see here on the slide is the results of my investment portfolio. We call it the FREDSI, Foster Recommendation Eliminate Detraction Stock Index. The FREDSI has crushed the Vanguard Total Index over the years, more than essentially tripling it. And those of you who've seen all these claims, everyone says things like this, but look at this very carefully. Companies who were identified over a decade ago with a single non-financial metric, Net Promoter Score, measured very carefully by what we'll talk about shortly, a Bain Prism rigor. Those companies outperforming the market over the subsequent 10 years in a remarkable fashion. Most of my personal wealth is as a result of this insight. I'm talking here about a fundamental mind shift. And I know in a short webinar like this, there is no way I can change the way you see the world, but I hope I can just put a glimmer of light in there that there's a possibility that the world works differently than we all presume it does. And just remember, we're listening to accountants every day because we run our business with accounting metrics. They have defined our paradigm, our world. Now, you see a list here on one side, financial capitalism, the other side, customer capitalism. Customer capitalism is what I think actually drives the world. It's sort of like Copernicus when he said, no, the sun is the center of the universe. Not very many people believed him back then, and he almost got killed for stating what he thought the truth was. Well, the notion that the investor is the center of the universe, which is expressed through accounting metrics that we use to run our businesses and govern our businesses, that's what drives most businesses today. Profit is the objective function. Whereas in Fred's world, the Bain world, the customer is the center. The key, but that's not just talk. Keystone metrics. How do you measure progress? In the financial world, you measure generally accepted accounting principle results. In the customer world, you look at Net Promoter Score, how many retention rates, share of wallet, how increases in anything that a signal that you've made the customer's life better and enriched their existence. What about cultures? In the financial world, the culture tends to be one of we follow the rules, we comply with the legal regulations, but once then we just caveat emptor, baby. Whatever is legal, let's make money. Let's have points breakage and gimmicks and marketing. The keystone metrics or the culture of a customer-centered company is based on love thy neighbor as thyself. High standard of human behavior, and you'll see in a second, shortly, the leaders here believe that they don't deserve profit. Better if they made them happy. Growth engine is viewed differently in the financial world. If you need to grow, hire more salespeople, get a better sales commission structure, marketing gimmicks and campaigns. In our customer world, that's not the way you grow. When you're not growing fast enough, it's because you're not doing remarkable things for your customers, so they are coming back for more and telling their friends. And that leads to a very different set of investments and priorities. You treat your employees differently in these two worlds. In one case, they're costs. In the other case, they're innovators and brand ambassadors. And finally, it actually has a different primary duty of leadership. In the financial world, you are bound to protect shareholder interests. That's actually the regulatory governance system of public companies puts this front and center. But in our world, the leader's job is to help their teams achieve greatness in their lives through service to customers that makes their lives better. So you think about it, as the leader of a company, I need to inspire my teams to embrace a purpose of service to others, to customers, and help them achieve that. And that actually aligns interests in a remarkably effective way. I mentioned earlier, this is a minority, I'd say almost a radical point of view. When we ask leaders around the world, what is the primary purpose of your business organization? Only 10% say customer is the most important. Customers come first. I think we'll move ahead, but ponder the results there. A couple of practical examples quickly. T-Mobile, one of the real success stories in the United States. This was a disaster when a new CEO came in. Callie Field, the current CXO, put it so nicely. She said, our position was precarious. We had no other customers. And they did. The CEO came in and they simplified rate plans. They got rid of roaming fees. They implemented net promoter scores and closed loop. And the results were extraordinary. They went from the worst net promoter score in the industry to the best at 39. Now, pay attention to that rank order. T-Mobile first, Verizon second in net promoter, AT&T third. Let's see who had the best results. Not just, this is for their customers, but what about their shareholders? Sure enough, total shareholder return was the best for T-Mobile, second for Verizon, third for AT&T. In fact, net promoter explains whose investors are going to win. And this is a pattern that you'll see again and again. I see it at first in banking, and First Republic Bank, I note here because they put us onto something very important. There is an additional metric that helps us live this customer capitalism. We call it earned growth, but we didn't invent it. We saw it in use and gave it a good name. First Republic started out as a tiny investment, $9 million of capital in '85. They're now worth over 30 billion market cap. They're growing the right way, customers coming back for more and bringing their friends, and they measure the percentage of their growth that comes from existing customers growing their balances and their referrals. So that's the back for more and bring their friends flywheel that we've talked about. And when I saw them reporting this in an investor presentation, it struck me, we need to bring this together with Net Promoter Score so that we can help the this customer-centered business movement move ahead. Winning on Purpose gives a list of the key elements of a business who really is serious about living in this world and prospering. And what we'll hear from Darci is how to make this a practical reality. So Darci.
Thanks, Fred. And as always, it's a great way to start to listen to Fred talk about what he's observed over more than 4 decades of observing companies in this topic and really pulling out those exemplars that live the strategy of customer love. But let me talk a little bit more practically, perhaps, on what are these companies really doing differently to expand on Fred's examples. And in our mind, there's really 4 components to earning growth with a customer. One purpose above all others, and that is enriching the lives of the customers, the employees, and the communities in which they live. And so for many companies, the purpose, the mission, the vision, frankly, gets a bit muddied by trying to be all things for all people. Being clear about your North Star And the role you play in enriching your customers' lives creates a lot of clarity for your organization and your front line. Number two, and thanks to Christine for the nod, for being someone who spends a lot of time thinking about employees and what it means to have a good job. And in our mind, inspiring teams in the customer love strategy is giving your employees, your front line, the room and the right to serve customers in the way that they would want to be served. And that opportunity is what is inspiring. We wrote an article a couple of years ago that your employees work for love and not money. Now, you have to pay someone a living wage, but beyond that, what really gets people energized is actually the opportunity to serve others and to live their best life through their role at work. And as a leader, your job is to create the capacity for them to do that and allow them to benefit from the customer feedback that they receive. The third is being remarkable, and that's a play on words. Being remarkable means, as Fred described with some of his examples, is continuing to bring superior products and experiences to your customers. And in today's world, that means you're leveraging your data, the analytics from it, and the technology to deliver more value. And if you do that, what's interesting is that you literally become remarkable. What I mean by that is your customers themselves will become your marketing engine. And what you need to do then is rally your promoters. Those customers who love you the most will talk about you, and they will share what works for them with their friends, their family, and their colleagues. And so knowing who loves you and why, doing more to increase the value you bring to them means they'll actually be the voice of your brand. Underneath those four things are two fundamental, I'll call it the infrastructure of customer love. Number one is the Net Promoter System, which is listening to customers systemically to look for things that you need to fix, and then allowing your front line to learn and grow from that feedback. And then secondly, really understanding the underlying aspects of earned growth economics. How much of your growth is contributed by the customers you already have, buying more, staying longer, and telling their friends. That is much more sustainable than the marketing engine that is the leaky bucket in many companies. Let me take a few moments to talk through each of those and just give you some examples so that they will resonate with you and these concepts will come to life. So let me start by leading with purpose. And I'll use an example that many of you probably know quite well, given its Nordics origin, which is Lego. And if you read about Lego, first of all, their mission is quite clear: to inspire and develop the builders of tomorrow. They have both a set of promises that they regularly think through and deploy against, and then they have the proof points in their functions and in their business model. On the promises, it's things like deeply caring for their people who enable the play experience. It's creating games that develop the innate capabilities that every parent wants for their children to be able to problem solve and express themselves through creativity. It means that they'll bring an ecosystem of services to those customers, to those kids, and to those families that will enable a more enhanced experience through partnerships. And then lastly, and this is very impressive what Lego has done, is really think through the positive impact on society and the planet, which these children will inherit. And then in the proof points, I won't go through all the detail there, but they've done extraordinary things to actually enable those things. So for example, in products and sales, they really broke the blue-pink divide by releasing unisex or ungendered sets and moving the girls' sets to more female STEM workers, and then retraining store staff in order to allow parents to navigate their products in a way that meets their children where they are. Let me move next to inspiring teams. So inspiring teams, let me first talk about what that system looks like. This is the Net Promoter System I talked about before, which is at the heart of inspiring teams, which is allowing your customers to inform and support your employees by providing feedback. Because if your employees are happy, they will create happy customers, and happy customers will inspire your employees. It is the flywheel of flywheels. And one mistake many companies make is they immediately go to, we're going to collect a bunch of customer feedback and we're going to build our compensation and incentive system around it. And there's nothing, that is one of the biggest mistakes people make in implementing the Net Promoter System, because it immediately removes the ability to listen and to learn. Oops, I'm having a little bit of problem. Oh, I see. Hold on just one second. Technical difficulties. Let me get to where I want to get to. All right. One example of a company that does this well, inspiring employees, is Chick-fil-A, the chicken restaurant in the United States. And a couple of things that they've done to really bring that customer centricity to life and engage their employees is allowing a lot of room to maneuver at the individual franchise, as well as enabling those teams with the technology that will serve customers different. So for example, Chick-fil-A was the first quick serve restaurant to deploy NFC-enabled table markers. So customers order from their phone, tap it on a table, and someone brings their meal to them. Why is that important? Because if you're in a restaurant with small children, there's nothing worse than standing in line. What you want to do is you want to get your kids settled. You want to hand them that toy or whatever's going to keep their attention. You want to order quickly and get your food and get going into your day. There's a great story in the book that that we learned about where a Chick-fil-A employee who was mopping the floor saw that a young child was interested in helping. And so took his time, even though he was on the clock, to hand the mop and the broom to a small child and do the sweeping with him. And I don't know about you all, I have teenagers. I only wish that that intuition to mop and to clean remained. But every parent knows that when you have a small child, they're very interested in just participating in what adults do. And giving that employee the time and the space to engage with a customer is what makes all the difference for that person and for the customer. A few minutes on Be Remarkable. Unfortunately, this is a standard which has not stood still. What it takes to be customer-centric when it comes to delivering great products is moving. For a time, it was all about just listen to customers. And then it was, all right, now digital, how do we make sure that all the experiences work together across the wave of channels? Where we are today is it takes an integrated, nearly real-time insights and orchestration to personally engage with customers. And so a company that has done that very well is Peloton. And if you're following Peloton, they've been in a world of trouble recently for lots of reasons. But as a Peloton rider, I will say they make it so easy to connect with them and to have an extraordinary at-home experience. They have incredibly high retention. Their year-on-year growth has been extraordinary, and their monthly churn is very low. Now, they have some operational things to get through, and they've got a new management team that I think will stand the test of time, given the core customer centricity that they have and the extraordinary experience they deliver. Lastly, rally promoters. Chewy.com is a retailer that essentially provides all things pet, dogs, cats, parakeets, you name it. And what's interesting is they are massively beating Amazon at their game. Chewy basically gave their customers the means to promote them. Customers were delighted by the things they do. There's a great example on this slide where a call center agent who was an artist spent a lot of time talking to a particular dog owner about their dog. And that dog owner, with all the pride of a pet owner, sent that call center agent a picture. That call center agent then penned a note and drew a picture of the dog. And here you see the tweet that went viral talking about the interaction with the call center agent and that pet owner. So they already give the space to those employees to trigger these acts of love and then provide an opportunity for the customers to talk about those things in the world. And it creates an amazing virtuous cycle. That employee felt good, Chewy benefited, and that pet owner felt all the pride in the world of owning that beautiful dog. Another example that I wanted to talk about in terms of rallying your promoters is Dunkin' Donuts. So the thing that's crazy about Dunkin' Donuts is they sell coffee. It happens to be average coffee, in my opinion. You may love Dunkin' Donuts coffee. But what they're really doing is they're talking to customers in the way they want to be talked to, and they're really engaging the next generation. And so everything that they do is related to how social media works. So they've recently had a promotion called Beat the Streak. How many days in a row can you go to Dunkin' Donuts for your coffee? And they had competitions and prizes along the way. 10 days, 20 days, 100 days. And there are ways to engage your friends and your family in beating the streak. Starbucks is extraordinarily good at this, one of the early adopters of a mobile app to enable the experience by giving people star points and even launching exclusive games that allow people and members of their app to earn the right to play when they buy. The one in the middle, I'll just touch on really quickly. It's by Sephora, the cosmetics retailer. You can exchange the points you earn for prizes that are dropped in a rewards bazaar that are only for a short time before they run out. So that scarcity is brought in, that gaming is brought in. And what that does is it gets people talking about Sephora and how fun it is to shop there. So different ways to be remarkable and extend that into rallying your promoters to become your marketing engine. I'll conclude with this visual, which is what are the components of earning growth with a customer love strategy? And you'll notice our beautiful sunflower here spreading the love to all of its peers beneath it. So leading with purpose, inspiring teams, being remarkable, and rallying your promoters, underpinned by the Net Promoter System and earned growth economics. That's the playbook for earning growth with customer love. Let me hand it over to the facilitator of the Q&A.
Good. Christine, will you take the Q&A?
Happy to. I think I saw a question in the chat, which was that this was mostly B2C examples. So they were wondering if you maybe can give a couple of examples in the B2B space.
Yeah, happy to. I'll get started, Fred, and you can add your favorite. We recently worked with one of the largest technology infrastructure companies. And we worked with them in a couple of different ways. Number one is we implemented the Net Promoter System. In B2C, it's a one-to-one relationship. In B2B, it's often much more complex. You've got the relationship manager. You may have regional sales leaders. You've got the fulfillment and operational team. This particular group also had a repair and service team. How do you provide all the insights of the customer to that team of people so that they are serving that customer in the way they want to be said? And every relationship manager I've ever met said, I know exactly how my customer feels about our company. And then we do the work. We actually ask the customer how we feel. And 80% of B2B customers, if given the right alternative, would actually move their business to a competitor. And so most of those relationship managers learn a lot from receiving that feedback. So this particular technology company, through that implementation, saw a radical turnaround in how their sales teams and the broader teams serve their clients. And they were able to avoid the big oh no's when a major customer leaves them when they think everything is working well. And it gave them the opportunity to learn which customers love them so they could deepen the relationship and sell them more. Fred, and any other examples that come to mind for you?
Yeah, I'd say that this is a question we often get. The truth is Net Promoter Score started in a business-to-business environment. It was at Bain & Company that we invented the need to reach out with a brief survey to our core enterprise customers. And a Bain relationship will often have multiple offices of Bain & Company involved, multiple locations of a global enterprise client involved, not just the C-suite, but middle-level executives and sometimes frontline people who our teams are influencing. So the notion of needing to gather feedback with a cycle time that was useful to us was at the center of why this got created. It got simplified and moved to many B2C examples that are easier to write about. But the truth is, the core idea is B2B. And at Bain, think of it, especially there are a lot of kinds of B2B. There are large global enterprises, the SMB. SMB operates very similarly to the consumer examples, but the difference would be the large global enterprise. And for Bain, we found we need a device to ping the right people in an organization, to keep track of whether it's a decision maker, an influencer, or someone that actually uses the service, and the right list, and we have the right frequency, and we use the right medium. You don't send SMS texts to some people. You don't send emails to others. You have to customize the request, the timing, and then engage the full Bain team, not just the senior partner at gathering that information. Most importantly, it's actually just a part of the overall account management process. It's not something separate from it. It's not a way you check on people and make sure they're not screwing up. It's something that our frontline partners use as a way of gathering feedback. And so our frontline partners are the ones that decide when surveys get sent and to whom. The center at Bain has learned, stay out of that. We're not Big Brother looking over your shoulders. We're here to help you with best practices and technology that lets you do this. But then the real conversation takes place with face-to-face meetings or Zoom meetings. The question, though, really kicks it off effectively. That's the one portion. The other thing we do is we engage our teams in weekly huddles to get feedback on how things are going with not just with their team, but with the client. So we use our front line in a regular rhythm every week or every 2 weeks to make sure we're checking on progress and prioritizing correctly, elevating those things that are getting in the way of delighting customers when appropriate. That's how I might think of the core process in global B2B.
Thank you. We have another question here also is about sort of troubled relationship with customers. We of course know that it can be individual, but it can also be as some of the examples you had where they're quite low. We have quite a few of those here in the Nordics as well that are sort of pretty strongly negative overall and so on. Do you have thoughts on how do you turn that around? Is it a different way of thinking about it when you turn around relationships versus, i.e., making detractors neutral versus making neutrals promoters?
I have always found that the first act of love is careful listening. And when customers recognize that you are and concerned about your relationship and committed to improving it, they usually find that shocking because they're used to dealing with companies who are profit-centered and financially centered, which is a very selfish orientation, and they're used to people sort of figuring out how to manipulate the customer into making as much profit as they can. That's communicated through commission structures. It's communicated toward everything we do. And so when you convince someone that no, we don't deserve profits until our customer's problem is solved or until our customer is happy, they often will be very helpful in figuring out how that could happen. But it can't be done just with surveys. The outbound survey can start a conversation effectively, but then it's that series of face-to-face dialogues and group discussions that is oriented toward how can we solve your problem better. And it's not simple. I guess it's not complicated from an idea point of view, but the complication is most businesses are set up with a different purpose than making their customers happy. And leaders have to fix that to really enable their frontline teams to do something productive to solve those detractor challenges.
Thank you. I have one more here, which I think is very in time, but can you tell us how social media has impacted, positive and or negative, the context of building customer loyalty and building the brands?
Yeah, I'll jump in just to get us started. First of all, what's super interesting about social media is, there was a time when your detractors or your promoters didn't have the megaphone they have today. And often what we see is some of the most embarrassing moments for a company become very public very quickly. Whether that's customers literally live streaming bad moments of service to just examples of what goes well and what goes poorly. And so I think it absolutely has an impact. And I think the very best companies are really on top of that. They're actually thinking about social media as a new service channel, a new way to engage their customers, and they're actively monitoring it. I can remember, Fred, in the context of our Net Promoter System Loyalty Forum, which is a group of member companies that come together to talk about customer centricity. We visited an airline that had I don't even know how to describe it. It was almost like a war room that was constantly monitoring social media relative to the way its planes were landing, or were they on time, were they short, where was weather disruptions, and they were actively in the process of monitoring that, responding live in social media to individual customers and more broadly. And so I think it is seismic, and the impact it can have, and the megaphone it can have, and you have to be on top of it in today's world. And by the way, that's true of B2C and B2B. We hear about it in the news on B2C, but it happens in B2B as well, just in slightly different forums.
The only thing I'd add is that I see social media flipping over toward short video communications and away from just text verbatims. And so those of you who care about rallying your promoters should consider feedback devices that let your promoters share an experience with a visual, either a video of an event or a video of themselves talking, and get that as your content to then share or encourage them to share with that broader public. We're done. People are sick of surveys. Don't think of Net Promoter. Don't think of Winning on Purpose as an instruction book on how to do surveys. It's a philosophy of enriching your customers' lives and growing through sharing their success and their happiness. And I think social media plays a vital role in that now and even more in the future.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. I remember very clearly there's a retailer in the US that allows people to give feedback with video, and I had the opportunity to watch a couple hours of it. And it's extraordinary how many people at home will turn on their camera to talk about what works or what doesn't with a company. And you get so much more. You get the body language and the tone and the stories in a very powerful way. Imagine handing that to a store manager or someone at the front line to say, here's what your customer really thinks.
And Darci, Chapter 5 was written, this is, I guess, inside baseball, but Chapter 5 was written for boards of directors. It's to change their understanding of what their true duty is if they're trying to protect the interest of long-term investors. And I think that getting this video content from promoters and detractors in front of every board meeting to kick it off, so the board doesn't devolve to financial mindset, because that's what they've always done, and that's what you have to change what your board is thinking. And these videos of customers, intelligent, logical people who have emotions, it's a way to get your board thinking the right way.
That's a very good point. And we did a project now, it's a long time ago. It was the first one I did personally on MPS. We had management to call customers. And I know it was sort of inspired by you, and it was they didn't want to do it first, and they didn't have time. And then they took a management meeting and took out a few hours. Everybody had to go out at the same time. And I can tell that was a changing moment in that company when they all came back like this and talk about what they heard. And that mindset shift, I think, is incredibly important that you mentioned there, Fred. I have another one here from Henrik. So he's all for 100% for customer capitalism, but at the same time he's saying, of course, it's okay to make money, but it shouldn't be the primary goal. And you showed in customer capitalism, companies make a lot of money. So the question that he finds difficult to answer is, if the companies were 100%, 10% into enriching the life of customers, why not lower prices and earn less?
If you look at these customer capitalist leaders, the NPS leaders, they tend to be better values already. What they recognize is that instead of trying to grow a business by buying growth through expensive sales commissions and marketing campaigns and advertising, that tax, the tax for not truly loving your customer is very high. And when you remove that tax and grow in this frictionless way that ends up yielding great returns for shareholders. It's not because their margins are crazy high. Their margins tend to be good, but normal. It's that the growth is free, and stock markets really reward efficient, profitable growth. So I think this question is a little bit from a financial accounting mindset. And I think hard about a different way of creating shareholder value that is not a zero-sum game of taking money out of a customer's pocket that you should put some back in. It's having an appropriate relationship with a customer that doesn't give you a penny of profit until they are happy. But once they're happy, the benefit of profitable growth with zero tax being paid is a wonderful benefit for employees and investors.
Thank you. We also have some practical questions, but I think also we get a lot of questions here in the Nordics. It's more about, as you said, there is a survey fatigue and there are lots out there, but how do you make sure that you actually engage customers to actually answer the questions and not get a sample like the very unhappy customers or the ones that always answer surveys and so on? And how do you make sure not only get the answer on the score, but get the valuable input on what you really could work on?
Yeah, I'm happy to get us started here. You know, I would say, first of all, there is survey fatigue. That is true. But you can still get a great read by asking customers what they experience at the right moment. And so what we find is that you got to find that most appropriate moment. You know, it needs to be, if you're asking the comment on an experience, it needs to be recent. So you need to screen for, did you recently come into our store? Did you recently have a claim if it's insurance? You need to make sure that there's recency so the customer can actually be like, oh, this is a relevant question. I did just experience this. I want to respond. I did like, you know, what Fred said earlier, thinking about novel ways that can collect that feedback that isn't always a survey. There are also some very clever technologies out there that make answering a survey very quick and easy. It's embedded in an email, for example, versus moving it over to a new and different place. You also have to be very, very respectful of your customers' time and energy when they're responding. I recently received a survey from an airline that asked the same question 5 different ways. It was a 2-minute survey that took me 10. And of course, I always fill them out because that's just that's a customer-centric nerd to me. So the other thing I would say is what we see a lot of companies do is they end up getting, they gear it so that they get the best responses rather than mainly detractors, which was a little bit in the question. For example, an insurance company that was surveying customers after a claim event, and they only surveyed those customers that their claim was paid, not those whose claim was denied. So you really do have to think through the science of who am I asking, in what way, at what moment in time, and then you got to check and see in a screener, if I was talking survey speak, to make sure that you're getting the right mix of customers. I recently spent a bunch of time on the phone with a bank in the Middle East that was concerned that it measured NPS over time, that the customer mix underneath it was shifting as they gained new customers. And so you got to be thinking about tenure, product holdings, experiences that they're bringing to the feedback. You know, you do really want some keen customer insight folks to make sure they're getting that really right. And then the most important thing when you're asking for customer feedback is to do follow-up, to make sure that you're closing the loop with that customer, particularly the detractors and the promoters, to make sure that they feel heard and that they know that you're on it. Even if you can't do everything they're asking for or do more of what they want, that you're clearly responding to them in a way that says you appreciate their feedback.
And make it easy. Everyone is addicted to their mobile phone these days. Integrate feedback into the device that they live on, and make it fun. And in business to business, pre-negotiate. Ask people, would you be willing to give us feedback once a year, twice a year? Do you like SMS, text, or email? And once you get them to say that's a reasonable frequency, your response rates will explode. And then Darci's point, follow up. When follow up is appropriate, whether it's a email or a phone call or a Zoom, make sure it happens. People love to be listened to. They do not like having their time wasted and be part of big market research samples that lose their individuality and are, I think, disrespectful.
Christine, can I hop in here with a question?
Absolutely.
I was curious about you kicked it off, Fred, with talking about how a lot of companies where the purpose gets in the way of really succeeding in this NPS. So can you give me some examples of where you think the purpose of a company got in the way of making their customers happy?
Have you ever rented a car and had the refill? They refill the fuel tank and charge 300 or 400% markups on gas. Have you ever worked at a bank or had been a customer of a bank or a brokerage firm that has these abusive little fees that nickel and dime you and are inappropriate? Have you ever, and maybe this is less true in Europe, but have you ever changed your flights and had them charge you £100 or €100? No, for good, not because it cost them that, because they could get away with it legally. That I could give you 1,000. People. The reason people think the purpose of business is to screw their customers and make their investors rich is because those are the behaviors that they see every day. And when I say only 10% of companies actually put customers first, it's true. 90% of the interactions of people, of consumers with their businesses, are being influenced by their interactions with people who have a model that the purpose of a business is to make the shareholders rich. And it's a failing model for everybody.
Thanks, Fred. And just my Nordic colleagues, do you guys have any questions? We're in the last 5 minutes here of the session, so I don't know if you have some burning questions you want to throw out there. There's also a couple in the chat still, I think, Christine. But
Steve, it's Jason, AmCham Norway. Thank you. Yeah, just along those lines, right. Just back, Fred, to your original comment. 90% of businesses have adopted a purpose that is bound to fail. A very strong statement there. I probably should have paid better attention on your list of companies that you've actively invested in. But the 10% of the good guys, do you notice they're from specific industries? Are there industries that get it? Are there regions of the United States or the world? What do those companies kind of generally have in common? If you could comment on that. Great
question. Darci, do you, I have an instant answer, but I have not thought. They're good people. Yeah, the funny thing about the leaders of these firms, you'd like your kids to work for them. I invest in them, so I associate myself with it. When I write about a company and I praise it, I'm sort of co-branding Bain's reputation, my personal reputation, Darci. It's a big deal to say this is an exemplar. And so they are just good people, and they are all over the world. No, it's not cultural. I'm going through a quick check. You have plenty in the Nordics who are outstanding. But Darci, do you have a better answer than that?
No, but the only thing I would say is that it doesn't mean that companies that are on the other side are evil people or badly intended, have bad intentions. The management system that Fred described, the financial capitalism, sets it is all up to drive for profit. And there was a great question earlier about, how should you think about being a business for profit, but still wanting to enrich customers' lives. And so, we often say at the core of customer love is being courageous, of making those longer term trade-offs for doing the right thing for customers with some level of confidence and courage that it will pay off in the long run, because it can be hard in the moment. And so I would say that, it's as a leader of a firm, you really have to give your team the right to be courageous. And that's one of the hardest things to do in business, is to buck the trend. And many companies that we talk about I'll call them, they were born loyalty, meaning that, Fred's first book was, 20 plus years ago. If any company has been born, they realized that loyalty made a difference. That many schools of thought, many business schools, others still take hold of shareholder capitalism. So that's a tough shift So I have a ton of empathy for everyone fighting that battle every day.
Thank you. I think if I would answer a bit for the Nordics, and this is not scientific, I have to say that, but I think the companies where the founder has been around, because if I would take a few examples in Sweden, I would say IKEA, Spotify, Klarna.
Yeah.
Because when they start their companies, they're so close to the customers, right? That's the whole idea. You need to have something. And I think many of these founders are obsessed about the front line and so on. And I think they create some of that culture. So I don't know if you've seen some of that, but I think if you just at least would look at some great companies we have here in the Nordics, that founder, and I think that also comes to purpose, to what you're saying. It's a clear purpose, and they're close to the customers, and it all comes together, particularly in these very successful younger companies.
About out of time. Peter, Alexander, do you have a final question we can get in here?
I actually loved the question that was in the chat because it was something I was wondering about as well. And if we can expand on it, because you've touched upon it in several questions a bit, which is, why some companies seem to get it and others don't. And, I think one of the wonderful things about working with AmChams is you get such an ecosystem view of these things. And, are there things we can be doing as a community that helps with that? In the chat, it says in the genetic makeup of a company, but helps get everyone on board with this type of thinking.
Can I tell you a quick story that I think follows on that example? One of the startup, a very successful startup I've invested in, I'm on the board of it. I describe in the book. They're called Built. I'm going to a board meeting, and the first thing we're doing is sitting down and having a book discussion group with all of their employees who have been reading Winning on Purpose, and summarizing what the implications are. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? I think Winning on Purpose as a device for getting to people to think hard about why they're going to work, what's consistent with our organization culturally with this set of exemplars, what we should do more of, and what we should stop doing. That's a very useful conversation to have. And I think there's no better way than to sit down with employees chapter by chapter, week by week, and talking through what this would mean for us if we chose to follow it.
Thank you very much. We actually, in Finland, we have an unofficial book club going on, so I'll remember that as well with our members.
Okay.
Peter, you have a question?
Do we still have time?
1 minute.
I guess it's a quick question then. The one thing I thought of is
question.
Like as Christine alluded to, in Sweden there's a lot of unicorn companies, and the founders are still in the front line. So what can a startup do before they get to be Klarna, Spotify size? With limited time, limited resources, with this customer-centric approach in mind, how can they actually track these things when it comes to retention and a net promoter score in a practical way?
Scott Cook, the founder of Intuit, the guy that's influenced, we met at Bain many years ago. He went off to found a software firm that's worth $150 billion today. He said, Fred, if you want to build a big business, solve a big problem. And I think the essence of that is make sure you're measuring whether your customer's problem is being solved, whether you're putting smiles on their faces, whether they're succeeding and are happy. That's the center of this whole idea.
Great. That's like a customer-centric solution, easy to digest. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Peter. Well, hey, we're out of time, folks. I think we can, continue to chat a little bit. Let me just round out very quickly. So thanks, Fred and Darci. An amazing presentation, amazing book. We thank you so much for sharing your thoughts today and your unique insight with us. I think our members got a lot out of that. So we really thank you for spending time with us. Thanks again to Bain and Christine for the partnership on this insightful event. I also want to thank my colleagues, Peter and Alexandra and Jason, for this great partnership. We love doing these Nordic-wide webinars when we have really high-quality speakers like yourselves. So thank you guys for that. And that wraps up the program for today. Thanks for joining, and you guys have the great rest of the week. We're at Hump Day, so you only have 2 days left. So have a great day.
Thanks.